The original Modern Warfare 2, for those who remember, was a huge event in 2009, an FPS to be reckoned with, a blockbuster release. Move ahead a decade and, as is the trend these days, we had a Modern Warfare reboot in 2019, and now, in 2022, a sequel to the reboot called Modern Warfare 2. Now, Modern Warfare 2, the sequel to the reboot that is, comes out this October 28th. This week though, well, we have a beta to play around with PlayStation users getting early access to start, and so, this is it. As ever, comparisons, frame rate tests, and a bit of loading time side-by-sides are coming up. PS4, PS4 Pro, and PS5 are in the spotlight. How is it turning out really though? And are there any signs of a technical leap over the IW8 engine tech seen most recently in last year's World War-themed Call of Duty Vanguard? Let's find out. To be honest, this beta is so far relatively lightish on content. That is to say, there's lots of modes filling out the beta's menus, team deathmatch, domination, and all the usual suspects, but with 3 maps on rotation, it's clearly a limited slice of the final experience. Still, what's here is strong. There's the 6v6 Mercado Las Almas map to start, a vibrant market town overrun by cartels, filled with these tight lanes. Next, there's the Breenberg Hotel, a sprawling suite of diners and lobbies set in Amsterdam, and lastly, there's Farm 18, built around an overcast Soviet-style training facility with great sniper vantage points. All 3 maps feel well balanced, to my eyes anyway. They're built for straight 6v6 games, so again, we're not seeing anything on the huge scale we saw in Call of Duty Vanguard's 48-player Blitz modes here, and certainly nothing close to the mega scale of Warzone games. Back to Modern Warfare 2, bearing in mind this is a cross-gen release, much like Vanguard, the IW engine tech is still very capably serving a wide spectrum of consoles. PS4, PS4 Pro, and PS5. There's quite a power spread there, some being far more CPU limited than others. But yes, Modern Warfare 2's core game design caters for the lowest common denominator to make 60 FPS possible. Even with that in mind though, there are big benefits to playing on PS5, not least the offering of a unique 120Hz mode. More on that later. The core resolutions stay in place as before. PS5 here targets 4K via dynamic resolution, chopping the horizontal resolution down to 1920 by 2160 where necessary. PS4 Pro does similar, though instead targets a lower 1536p figure, much like Vanguard, with flexibility for dynamic scaling under. And lastly, base PS4 has a 1080p presentation, scaling to 960 by 1080 lowest to maintain 60 FPS. And of course, all 3 reconstruct the image where necessary to their target resolutions. In comparison, the 3 PlayStations here show a clear step from one to the next in image quality. But honestly, this isn't Warzone. These aren't giant maps where resolution is crucial for spotting an enemy. Having this extra 4K clarity is always a neat plus point on PS5 obviously, but it's not a radical advantage in the competitive sense. These are small to medium-sized maps, they're just meant for 6v6, and on base PS4, honestly, you'll certainly hold your own in crossplay with PS5 players. In fact, the same goes for all the extra visual touches on PS5 compared to the base PS4 console. So let's simplify the comparison to just PS4 versus PS5, and I'll say up front, the PS4 Pro model in between uses the same settings as the base model, albeit running at a higher 1536p target resolution. Here we get to see the differences at the extremes, 1080p versus 4K on right, with dynamic scaling on each, giving PS5 a welcome boost in clarity to start. Anything else? Well, most of PS5's visual settings get a boost, and right away we see texture quality on market walls use a higher grade asset. The same applies across most detailed texture maps in each map, and PS5 simply has an appropriate boost in quality to make the most of its higher 4K resolution window, and the higher RAM of course. You might also notice a slight boost to shadow quality too, and in particular to screen space ambient occlusion, SSAO. Notice how the gun here is more thoroughly shaded as we pan across the area under the same lighting conditions. It adds a pleasing sense of depth to details beyond the gun too, even if most world details are exactly the same otherwise. A few other points stand out. Firstly, screen space reflections, SSR, are improved on water bodies for PS5. Expect sharper, higher resolution puddle reflections in the underground segments, and also across the outdoor sections, it gives a cleaner mirror image across dampened concrete materials. Is it a game changer? Again, not really, but it is a nice touch. More of a noticeable upgrade on PS5 is the improvements in terrain pop-in all round. Now, mostly pop-in isn't too glaring, though PS4 and PS4 Pro have some obvious issues with minor objects in the hotel map, which may well be cleaned up by release. These are fixed on our PS5 capture for the most part, with less distracting LOD transitions, and I suspect by the final release we'll see an all-round improvement to the game's polish, given there's a fair few visual bugs in the beta too. And in fact, I suffered 2 crashes to the system menu during my testing, one on PS5 and another on base PS4, hardly ideal. It's an early build though again, and we've seen in Vanguard's beta last year in fact, how much does improve by the final release. So, fingers crossed for the final launch code here. Looking to performance, I've got to be blunt and say PS5 is absolutely solid at 60 FPS with only the odd hitch or two while respawning. The market area is easily the biggest stress test point, judging by the frame rates on base PS4 and PS4 Pro there, which we'll see in a moment. And yet, PS5 just flies through. I spent hours just trying different modes, kill streak abilities, but PS5 is very capably turning in a locked 60. Not that we'd expect anything less, after all these are 6v6 games, and these are relatively contained maps, albeit crammed with detail. It's hardly the IW engine pushing PS5 to its limits, but still, what we've got here matches the general performance in Vanguard's beta last year on newer systems. 60 FPS is not a problem, and it bodes well for Series X too. Perhaps a more interesting extra on PS5 is its 120Hz mode. Now, resolution-wise, this drops to 1536p, similar to PS4 Pro. Also, it involves a bit of fiddling to get it working this time. In my case, I had to turn on the performance mode in PS5 system settings as usual, but then also delete the MW2 save file entirely for it to work. It's a bit obscured. There isn't a toggle in the game menus themselves on PS5, so it does involve a bit of a workaround. Once you know of course, but it should be front and center given how well it works. And yes, the readout for these 6v6 games is again absolutely rock solid. The game is beautifully optimized already for 120 FPS gameplay on PS5, and so it's no wonder the 60 FPS mode works so well too. Easily, this is the biggest advantage to playing on new generation hardware, literally doubling the refresh over your PS4 and PS4 Pro competition. Dropping back to PS4 Pro for a bit, we're again greeted by that fluid 60 FPS reading 95% of the time. It's a 60 FPS line, and speaks to how well the beta's already optimized for PS4 Pro. The exception? Well, that'd be this long overview of the marketplace, right at the center of the map. All these stalls filled with destructible objects, and often lobbed grenades and enemies charging through, make it easily the most taxing spot in this build. On PS4 Pro, that translates to a low 50 FPS reading at worst during gameplay. There's worse readings still during the respawn screen with the big overview of the map, but that doesn't really affect gameplay. Expect under 50 FPS in that case, some hitches perhaps, but mostly for gameplay we're locked at the 60 FPS line. Last up is base PS4. As you'd expect, there's a step down again from the performance we see on PS4 Pro, and I will stress this is very playable, mostly 60 FPS, but yes, that marketplace area takes us down to 45 FPS or so when the firefights really reach a peak. It reaches a point where the beta becomes genuinely harder to play on the OG PS4, in this particular spot anyway. Outside of this, we have drops to the 40 FPS region during respawns with the map overview, though none of that really intrudes on gameplay itself. It's not 100% optimized for 60 FPS then, but PS4 does run the Farm 19 map and the Greenberg Hotel map at a mostly stable level, with the odd hitch every now and then. So, as ever, this is an early snapshot of where Modern Warfare 2 stands. It's an early build, and we've seen developer Infinity Ward, time and time again, like clockwork, turn around at times less optimized beta builds into polished end products. Really, that's all I've got to say on this beta, given the small handful of maps on show. Actually, a quick word on loading times to round off. Loading the Las Almas map on all 3 PlayStations shows PS5 almost halving the wait to get into a game, 7 seconds against 13 on the base PS4. I don't think it has a major impact for a game like Call of Duty, but perhaps it'll give you time for a last second tweak to your loadout. Beyond that, my eyes really are now on the final game coming this October. The campaign mode usually works as a brilliant showcase for Infinity Ward's tech, but for the beta today, what we're seeing on PS5 in particular is the best case on console on the PlayStation side anyway. The 120Hz mode is extremely robust in multiplayer, but no test is complete without checking out the set-piece heavy moments of the story mode, so more to follow. But that's all I've got today. If you did enjoy this video, feel free to like or subscribe, and don't forget to hit that bell for instant notifications as any new video lands. To get a high quality version of this video, check out our Patreon at digitalfoundry.net, and to get in touch directly, just use Twitter. But from me for now, thanks for watching.